Hi, I'm super excited to talk to Deb today. Deb is my personal friend, and we work on many projects before in the wellness industry. And so today, I'm really happy to be able to, find a time so we are together and have this little interview and chat about one of my sort of favorite topic, which is really about authentic success and how do we embrace change and living a more inspired life, which is a recurring theme on all of my podcasts. But just first introduce, this is the podcast called Conversations That Matter, and we're talking about stories from women that aim to empower other women. So today we have Sherphred. Deborah works in so many different international corporate projects in banks, in the finance industry, and she had done about 30 years of it. And then you changed, and then you started your own business as a purpose-driven entrepreneur, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And she created the community called Gratitude Community, which is to deliver wellness festivals across New South Wales. And then she also has her online platforms, and now also doing consulting and mentoring. So she has, obviously a few reincarnation of her career. And also now you're leading a project called Soul Advisors. So I guess for many listener or what viewer here, that maybe people will be really interested to really hear firsthand from a woman who have embraced so many different ventures in the business world. And that never do things in a small, subtle way. I mean, she go full in. So that's the guest for today, Deborah Sherphred. So welcome, Deb.
Thank you, Siwing. Love being here and lovely to catch up with you. As you said, we've been connected with each other for many, many years. So I look forward to being part of your podcast today.
Yeah, I often feel this is like a conversation like, imagine sitting in a cafe and then we have other girlfriends that have never met Deb before, and then that they all inspired to do something more in their life. And then I often feel that I'm always a middle person to introduce, like, so Deb did this and you guys should have a chat. And I felt this is almost like one of those occasions. So let me first ask you, that I know you have a very extensive background in the corporate world, and you were doing very well in that. And then you decided now it's time to change, and you want to, how do you call it? Like, let it all go, and then, start your own purpose-driven business. So what really triggered you? I mean, has it been like burning inside of you for a while? Or is it a slow transition, or it was like a jump off the cliff moment for you?
I think it was a combination of all sorts of things that you've just said then, Siwing. I think from memory, because it is now quite a while since I left. I left in 2011. But it would have been a stirring for at least 3 or 4 years of me feeling that I had more to give to the world and something within me that needed to be expressed. Like a lot of people, I was committed to the job I was in. I had financial commitments, and I had a certain skill set and knowledge that I believed that I didn't have any other options. So I stayed in the role for a period of time, probably a little bit past my use by date. And in that period of time, there would have been a growing resentment in a way of me having to stay there. But at the same time, there was days when I really enjoyed it. So when I look back at it, it wasn't every day I was depressed, but there was times when things would come up. I really would know that this wasn't where I needed to stay for the rest of my life. When you start feeling that way, you start to think, well, what are the other options? And you go looking. And that's when I stumbled upon Nature Care, which was a place where you could learn certain different ways to connect. So one was meditation, one was my diploma of energy healing. I did astrology, I did numerology. There was all these different creative outlets that I tapped into, which allowed me to prolong the time that I was there, but also started to continue to open me up, because often with those types of qualifications, we feel we're signing up from I always get this wrong, I think it's the left brain perspective, the logical brain, I'm going to learn this. But what actually happens is a process of getting to know more of who you are. And the more I started to peel back the layers, the more I realised I did have a lot more to give, and I needed to find a way in the world that would bring all of that together. So 2011 was when you asked, did I jump ship? I did jump ship. Like a lot of people, and often when I work with people, I encourage them not to do it my way. It's quite difficult to go from a nice, stable, well-paying career into, you know, the face of an entrepreneur and building a business, and to build that up whilst you've still got financial commitments is quite scary. But that's what my journey was. I did choose to do that for various reasons. But in the face of that, I suppose it also forced me quite quickly to make it into something that could sustain me financially as well. So that's what I did. It was a slow burn, a decision, and then finally a jump.
Yeah, you know, I really like two things you mentioned. One is that the feeling that you have more to give to the world, because, you know, when I talk to a lot of people who eventually become a creative entrepreneur or have their own business that is more in the purpose-driven arena, I think that's the number one thing. They feel they have something more inside of them, and what they're doing, it's almost like it's not that they're not good or useful, but they've outgrown it. Like they seem to have matured to the stage where they think they have more to contribute, there has more, and they want to you know, find themselves in that place where really truly live up to maybe their talents, maybe their capabilities, but also the calling that they have within them. So, you know, some people like you jump really, and some people take a much longer transition. But it's the number one thing I always hear from people is that they felt there's something more in life than what they're living, and there's more to give. And I think that's a very big point, the giving part, like it's like a lot of women felt they have all this possibility within them, but they don't know how to, you know, unleash it and embrace it. So they just sort of carry on. And I think that's a really good point to tell people. And I'm sure you meet lots of people in the industry since you started your gratitude community, that this is like, you hear that all the time.
Yeah. For what I would actually add to that, though, now, Siwing, at the time that I made that decision, and look, it could have been the culture of the company I was in, but often to me, you can find ways within the organisation to express that. Maybe it's a different role, maybe it's a different way of approaching it. I don't think always the answer is to jump ship. For some of us it is. I have got an entrepreneurial streak in me, and yet I was working in the banking world that at that time, I can't talk about what it is like now, but in that time it was very hierarchical. And so my style was quite a misfit to the culture of things, you know, by certain ways. But if you're in a culture that inspires that kind of way of bringing it, or creativity into the role, or you find an organisation that allows that, you don't always have to go out on your own. And I think that's the one thing that I would always, if I was to go back in that space, I know when I look at it where I was, it wasn't the right place, but I could have perhaps found a different organisation with a different culture that may have allowed me to grow without me having to jump. Maybe not. But I think that people should always think that it's not always one or the other. It's more about finding out who you are and what actually lights you up, and then what is the right thing for you at the time. And I think, yes, it can be going out on your own, but it also can be finding a niche or a place in your organisation or another organisation that allows those skills to come out.
I totally agree with that. I think sometimes it's probably best, looking back, it's not to take rash decision, but to really think deeper into it. Like I have to mention that sometimes I felt people maybe take a weekend seminar and then they think they can just, you know, jump into something else. But often it's actually probably the learning, maybe that certificate you can get in 3 days or 3 months. But often it takes maybe many years of real work and experience to hone in some skills. So I often would advise my client that, you know, yes, you feel that maybe your true calling isn't your corporate job. Maybe it's in the herbs or in nutrition, but not just get a certificate. Go start working in that field, get some real life experience in that, hone in your skill, and then when you're ready, then you go and you will. I think I see people when they do that. There's a huge difference. The struggle, the steep learning curve seems to be, you know, a bit easier because they kind of have some real experience instead of just chasing the dream. But I think it's really both left brain and right brain. I mean, even though we're in this industry, you kind of, you have the dream and inspiration, but you also need to follow with inspired actions.
The other thing is too, that I feel when you do that process of getting to know who you are, and you sort of said that we've had in our relationship many different versions of who we are, but there's normally a common thread. There's normally, look at your life purpose, there's normally a common thread of who you are and what you're here to express, but we might do it in different arenas.
Yes.
And so to me, it always comes back to knowing self first, and then knowing what the self wants to express, and then seeing if you can still do it in the arena that you've got it in, or you need to go somewhere else. And I think for me, often we think you've got to have all or nothing, and we still live in a world that needs to pay bills, and at this stage we haven't manifested anything different. We still need to have that sense of security, and we need that connection, that social connection, often with other people around us. And a lot of those things can happen in an organisation if the culture allows for that purpose to come through. But you need to, I think, as an individual, know who you are and what your strengths are, what your passion is, and know yourself before you can answer those questions. And I think if I was to speak to the people that are listening to this podcast that are feeling maybe a little bit disenchanted of where they are at the moment, is really, I know it might sound cliche, but to go within and actually find out what is it that's triggering. And it may be that a change isn't what you're looking for. It might just mean that you're evolving and you need to find a different way to express that, and potentially in the same places where you are today.
Yeah, so when you're not sure, just sit on it and meditate. Sit on it and meditate. Sit on it and meditate. And it may sound almost annoying when someone feel I just want to jump, I want to quit my job, I just want to throw it all away because today isn't a good day. I think it's almost annoying for us to say, but sit on it and meditate. Because I think, even every time we're going to come back to it, but, actually for those who doesn't know, Deb has been the biggest driving forces, as well as know, of all the amazing Embrace Life festivals. So she hosted many. I think, what was it, the craziest year you have like 10 or 11 of those Embrace Life festivals, and all over New South Wales.
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, it is a lot to do. I mean, I've been watching her, and some of them I participated as well, and there's a lot of work. So as I said before earlier, Deb doesn't do anything lightly. So she just jumped right in. And it was amazing. She connected with so many practitioners. She created a community, a movement of, practitioners in the well-being wellness industry in Australia. And so there's a lot of success in that. I mean, it was about 5 years or more. There was quite a bit of time. So, but with all this, I remember every time when you go through, like, say, maybe you need to change the game to the next level, or maybe slightly fine-tune the direction. I mean, it seems to me it's the same, isn't it? If you're not sure, if you don't know what the next step is, sit there and meditate. Sit on it and meditate. But but what I really actually wanted to ask that was, with all this success and all these big events and going through all this, what is the biggest thing you've learned, maybe from your challenge or maybe from your biggest reward? What have you learned since you jumped ship and started in your entrepreneur well-being guru industry adventure?
One of the things I have learned is that everything has a reason. So with you just sort of saying that about the Embrace Life festivals and to where I am today, and the frustration and the joys that went in between, when you get to a certain part, you can look back. There's always something that led to something else. So even though perhaps there was times when it wasn't going the way that I wanted it to, it often had something that I needed to take on about myself, my own personality, or it was highlighting something that I needed to be aware of, or the challenge itself actually came out with a version of my business model that I would then adopt. So often when things were thrown my way, or even the course of the 6 or so years of me doing the embrace component, when I sit back now to where I am today, it was all part of the journey. It was all part of the learning. I remember, I think it's Anthony Robbins. Is that the Good to Great? No, Anthony Robbins is Awaken the Power Within.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know him and his ability to speak to an audience and how he can connect. And I remember hearing or reading someone actually asking him, how quick can I be able to be able to speak like you, or to be in that space? And he basically said, well, how many hours do you want to dedicate? And there was this rule of thumb that if you wanted to do something well, you did it for 10,000 hours. So if you wanted to do something well for a period of time, over 10,000 hours, then, you know, just like me, for 5.5, 6 years, I was doing one every 4 to 5 weeks. I got really good in that skill set. But at the same time, when it got to the point where I got everything I needed to get from that, that's when it needed for me to start reinventing where do I take that next. So I think we are all given our different gifts and our different challenges, and there's always something behind it, be it that it's a personal development, it's a skill set, it's the people you connect with, it's the evolution of who you are. But everything that comes your way has a purpose. That to me, I don't know if that's a lesson or a challenge or the greatest gift, but that's the way I see the world today, is that everything that has come to me has evolved me to who I am today.
Sometimes
so now, when I go to things and to do things now, there is such a toolkit of things that I can pull together quite quickly because of the things that I've put in place before.
Yeah, and you know, when you were talking, I was thinking it's almost like that kind of, not necessarily love-hate relationships, but sometimes when you look back at a festival, there are moments that you think, wow, that was so awesome. That was really, inspiring and very exciting. But then there are moments that you're like, oh my God, that was just dreadful. I mean, that's the memories that, like, there's always ups and downs in that. And it reminded me, you know, almost all the romantic relationships, the good and the bad ones, so to speak, like quote unquote, good and bad ones. But all of them kind of teach us something, because even the bad ones, you kind of get to learn about yourself or people, about relationship, about what not to do as well, what to do. And they kind of like polishing your rough edges, so helping you to get a tool in the toolbox and, you know, preparing you for the next one almost. So even at the darkest moment, I felt, you know, even relationship or work or what you just said, it felt like it is sort of preparing us for the next. I mean, when we see it that way, it's a little bit easier to navigate through those harder waters, you know. And
definitely. And for me, like you talked about the amount of events that I did, like when I finally came to a point which actually coincided with me moving from Sydney to where I am today, I got to a point of sheer exhaustion that I had to let it go. And it was such a heart-wrenching period of my life, because I had invested close to, 2011 to 2017. So what's that, 6.5 years of doing something every 4 to 5 weeks, building a community of not just people, but people that I cared for, relationships that I cared for, and believing that that was what I was on this earth to do. To then get to a point where I had to let it go. Like, it was just, I can't express how, you know, when you feel like you've left your corporate and you've fought through all those hard barriers to get to your life purpose, and you finally get your life purpose, it's amazing. And then after 6.5 years, you realize that that life purpose isn't what you're meant to be doing anymore. You know, you have to go through that barrier again, and you question, well, who am I? You know, what am I here for? And to let go of something that once used to light you up, but now is actually a burden and a responsibility, and is actually not is life enriching, but it's actually taking life away. And yet at the same time, you don't know what to fill it with. So you sit with a void for 2 or 3 months. That's quite hard too.
And you know what I found it so interesting is almost like a spiral. It doesn't feel like you're going forward, because you said what lights you up now actually started to burn you, right? You're so burned out. But then you're still actually in a spiral staircase going upward, but it doesn't feel like you're going forward. That's the way I see the journey. And I've been there, and I know how much you put into each of these festivals. So when that transition comes, it was definitely very challenging. Although now looking back, I totally agree with what you said earlier, that it felt like prepare you for something different, greater, or it's like you evolve. Like you still, I felt your life mission or purpose is not very different direction. You're still on the same lane, but maybe slightly different angle, slightly different trajectory.
Totally. And that's what I mean by the fact that if you go within what your purpose is. So for me, my life purpose is in this industry that we're in, the wellness industry, the complementary therapies, spirituality, whatever you want to actually call it. But for 20 plus years, I walked in a corporate space and led teams here in Australia, over in the UK, in Asia, first female executive on boards, those sort of things, and then became an energy healer. So we all know there's a twist to that story. But in some respects, that's my purpose. My purpose is to have a foot in both camps. So, where we are today with the projects that I'm working on and the mentoring of individuals that want to get that message out, I had to walk the path that I walked in order for me to be able to add value. Do you know what I mean? I had to walk 20 plus years in the corporate space to understand it. I needed to walk the path as an energy healer to understand it. I now have built a community of my own to now take that to a global stage. Like all these things they were my training grounds. But at the time that you're going through them, you can sometimes attach yourself too much to something and identify yourself too much to something that it's so hard to let it go. But at a soul level, at a life purpose level, at a purpose driven, nothing has changed. It's just that I've actually had to it's like if you put it in a corporate space, I've had to do several departments before I take on the general manager role. Do you know what I mean? It's getting an understanding and exposure in the different areas.
So for some people maybe listening that they may be going through a similar transition, or they're feeling they're in a bit of difficult time. So you've gone through a few different transition yourself, so you know what kept you going when you're going through tough times. If there's something that you can share, or tips or advice to people who may be feeling a bit like, I just don't know, this is really challenging. So what would you say? I mean,
without and I don't want to sound really cliche, so I'm gonna say a few things, because some might actually come across and people go, oh yeah, I've been there, done that. But first off, my company, Gratitude. I've always had that as a anchor for me. And in the true sense of gratitude, not so much that I wash over things, but I often will take myself back to, if today is not what I want it to be, what is one thing that is actually working for me today that I can focus on? And to me, gratitude and that energy of gratitude will always lift me out of that funk. Because to me, if you start focusing on what you do have, be it a good, strong relationship, be it that you've got water to drink or air to breathe or sun on your back or the ability to have something to eat or rest your head, there is so many things that you can actually do to focus on what you do have, and that can lift your energy. The second, to me, would be also to think of, well, what is one thing that can light me up today? So, asking myself a question, okay, there might be 100 things that aren't working, but what is something that I can physically do today that will actually lift my energy? Now, that could often be reaching out to someone else as well. I find when you get out of your own head and you focus outside, sometimes for someone else, you're becoming in that energy of service rather than actually worrying about what's happening in this demon in your mind. So, that can also be something that can actually shift. The third thing is to just act a little bit of kindness to yourself. We all have really low days, and that's okay too. Do you know what I mean? I think often we put so much pressure on ourselves to live a purposeful life and be on purpose and whatever. But you know what? We are a human as well, and a human experience will have the ups and downs. And so often when you actually have a day that's a little bit heavier, your choice how long you want to stay in there, but often sometimes sitting in that will give you some answers as to where you're shifting as well. And it often can be just that day to be kind to yourself, to allow yourself to feel those emotions. We don't always have to be Pollyanna, singing on the hilltops. Sometimes we actually need to cry. Sometimes we need to be angry. Sometimes we need to be frustrated. Sometimes we need to go within to find those answers, and that's okay too. So I suppose, how can you help yourself? It's as simple as allow yourself to be. Be the friend that you want someone else to be to you. Give that to yourself. But then at the same time, be that friend that occasionally kicks yourself up the butt when you're getting a little bit too self-involved, to say, well, what is something that can shift me out of this? I think if you can do one action, whatever that action might be, can actually move the energy as well. So it's a juggling act, and that's why I said at the start, Sewing, is it really is a life journey. It's getting to know who you are and what you're about and what's your passion and what are your drives, and start having a relationship with yourself and beyond what we think we are through our mind, but more about how we're feeling and how we are in the world.
I really agree with your points, because a few things, like, first of all, I think overall, really, on an entire course of our life, yes, we should stay positive. But I mean, that's just a general being optimism, and not to be, take yourself down. But there will be days that we cannot always just say stay positive, because it's just the most annoying thing. So if you need to grieve, if you need to feel terrible for a day, a week, whatever, how much time you need, then let yourself be. And I think that's the art of it. The more I think you immerse yourself in a more spiritually infused life, that you do meditation, you have friends and you read books and they're in the same mind space, you tend to have I personally would say, a stronger resilience, that one day of these dark days, 1 week of these dark days, it's enough. I felt it's time to move, but I need not 5 days, I need 7. Like, you will have a better gauge about when to stop, and also allow yourself to feel that way. And I think that's sort of the strength that we gain from being, in sort of the more spiritually minded, having that lifestyle, read the books or do meditation, is because then you kind of feel how much is enough. And when you are probably overstaying in the dark days, then you also know it's time to tell your friend who will kick your butt. Because people like me and Deb, sometimes we cheer each other up, and sometimes we would just say, get on with it, because you can sense that too. And I think that's really important. And then one of the things that you talk about at the very start of your point, it's it may be cliche, and you guys may have done it. Then I took a second take, because sometimes we think, yeah, I have done it, I've heard it, but have you really? I mean, you may have heard it, but you may have, listened to something, but did you really hear the message? Like, sometimes we have to go back and look at, some of these things that we think we have done, and, trying to fix something. But have you really be very honest with yourself that you have done all the things you think you should do? Because sometimes that we just go, yeah, I know. but have you really?
It's about being authentic. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And I think authenticity starts from the relationship you have with yourself. So the older I get, the less I care about what people think of me, and the more I care about what I think of myself. So have I turned up? Have I treated others and myself kindly? Have I enjoyed what this day has given me? Am I allowing myself to express who I am, wherever I am? And if someone is listening here at the moment is in a role that they can't see at this point that they can leave because they need to pay their bills or whatever, what can I do today to allow the authentic me to come through and enjoy today? Because today after today, it's gone. And it's and then what is the one step perhaps that I can do to get me just that little bit closer? because often when you're in a place where you don't think you want to be, it can often be you need to still learn a skill or meet a person or do something in your life purpose journey that still hasn't been done yet before the next step comes. I really do believe that the universe does conspire to make us succeed, but often we are just too keen to get through it quickly. And we have this pressure to meet success at a certain level that often is created by other people's judgments or judgments of ourselves or what's on an outside, what we believe success to be. You know, it's just to me, it's about coming back to being authentic and to enjoy what we have. And that, as I said, very, very simple. Often the simple things are the things that are the answers, but we just don't integrate them, and we go looking, we overthink things, we go looking for this special thing, but the special thing really just is just coming back to our humanity and enjoying what we've got.
Yeah, I like people say when the student is ready, teacher will appear, or when the teacher is ready, students will appear. Sometimes we're just not ready. Maybe we're just not ready to move to the next step yet. But, you know, we're impatient, we're too keen, and we know, oh, come on, I'm this age now, I should have X, Y, and Z. And, you know, that can trip us. Like, it really reminds me of movies like similar to Karate Kid. When you're not ready, you want to fight and you want to go to the tournament, and then you kind of get butt kicked and then completely wounded, and then you learn one more thing, and then now you win the medal. That kind of storyline. So now we are about to wrap up today's interview, but I really like to ask this question for all the inspiring women that I talk to. So the question is, if you can go back in time, talk to the younger version of Deborah Sherphred, then what would you say to her? Say 20-year-old Deborah Sherphred.
I think I just answered that, Sea-Wing. To me, if I was to talk to the younger Deborah Sherphred, it would be stop worrying about what people think about you. Do you know what I mean? Like, when I was in my 20s, I was so worried about what people would think. I was still looking for people's validations, and I was comparing myself to what I thought people were expecting me to be. And you know, as I progressed through this life journey, I realised no one was probably even thinking about what I was thinking, and it doesn't really matter. Do you know what I mean? It was so much self-imposed criticism and judgment that didn't need to be there. So that would be my biggest one to my younger Deborah Sherphred. And then the second would be is to know your passion, who you are, and then just go out and express it and enjoy this life. Because, you know, without, you know, putting too much of a damper on, one day it won't be here. The people that you're connecting with or talking to may not be with you. And so just enjoy whatever life has to give you today.
Well, thank you so much for all your wise words and your experience and other things. And so, we haven't actually talked about one of the really interesting projects you're working on, about Soul Advisor. So tell us a bit more about Soul Advisor.
Well, Soul Advisor to me is my next project. And as I said to you, I feel that a lot of the things that I've worked on for the last 6 to 7 years has evolved into that space. It's a global community that will be combining all wellness practitioners onto one space. Our focus is very much about connecting the wellness industry to the people that are looking for that in one trusted source. But at the same time, it's a not-for-profit model that will actually look to bring all its funds behind the wellness industry. So we become not only a trusted and an authentic voice, but one that actually is valued and I suppose respected through either the professionalism and our business support, or the research we can offer, or the education that we'll deliver. So to me, it's really exciting because it's actually taking elements of both the leadership quality that I had in corporate, the contacts that I've made and the branding that we had with gratitude, the things, the focus that we actually had with the things that you and I even worked on with our online summits and magazine, and bringing it all under the one umbrella, but doing it on a global scale under the guidance of our founder, which is Elaine Yun, who's in herself's got an amazing story. So yeah, that's in a nutshell what it is. But I hope that your listeners get an opportunity to check us out, because that will be launched here in Australia in November.
So tell us, where can we find Soul Advisor?
The souladvisor.com.
So www.soul, SOUL, and then advisor,
Yes.
ADVISOR, all in one word?
Yes, that's all one word,
All
.com.
.com. Great. So
and then there's Facebook and Instagram as well. So that's Soul Advisors. So that's Soul Advisor with an S.
Okay. So advisors. Okay. Great. Thank you so much for today's talk. And I hope our listeners had maybe get a tip or two, or just, maybe identify something they can relate to. Anyway, hope that you find this is a conversation that matter. And very happy to chat with Deb. So until next time, everybody take care. So thank you.